I want to talk about what is practice. It's a good thing to talk about at the beginning of a new year. And actually would like to get some responses to that first. Of course, I have my own ideas of what that is. I'm curious what yours are. So you're going to get, are you okay, people, if your name is on here, on the recording? Just your name. We're not recording on the Zoom. I'll just point to people in here. So tell me what you think practice is.
Sitting.
Sitting. Anything else?
Patience.
Patience. Okay. Sitting and patience. Can you hear me? People on the Zoom? Okay.
Coming back to it.
Coming back to it. Okay. Anything else?
Curiosity.
Okay, curiosity. Okay, I was going to run in here just so, but okay, let's do popcorn. Okay, just yell it out. Go for it.
Using the Dharma in your life.
Reading?
Using the Dharma in your life.
Dharma in your life. Okay. What else?
Mindfully following the
Everything
precepts.
changes.
What, Malcolm? Hang on.
Everything changes.
Everything changes.
Mindfully following the precepts.
Mindfully following the precepts.
Integrating intention.
Okay, hang on. What was that, intention?
Integrating intention.
Integrating intentions. Anyone else?
Staying present.
Being present?
Staying present.
Staying present. What else?
I think it's like a cycle.
Tell me what you think. Well, okay, actually, yeah, tell me what you think. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry, that was my thing. Go for it.
So I think some combination of the knowledge of precepts and learning them, but then there's the action and there's reflection, and I consider all of that practice.
Okay, reflecting, learning,
So
reflecting,
learning,
and
acting.
practicing, or
Yeah.
action? Learning, reflecting, and acting on precepts. Okay. If you haven't spoken, it's a good time. What is practice?
Suffering.
Suffering. Oh. Anyone else? Okay. So I'll read it again. Suffering. Learning, reflecting, and acting on precepts. Integrating intentions. Staying present. Sitting. Patience. Coming back to it. Curiosity. Using the Dharma in your life. I wrote down yourself, but it was in your life. Everything changes. And mindfully following the precepts. Anything else? All right. So, those are all great. You're all right. All got an A. And we can all leave now. All right. I'll start with everything changes and using the Dharma in your life. In Zen, as you know, that often, especially at city center, per se, because this group here, in part, we are learning things, and for a lot of Zen centers, you're not really often told what the topic will be for the talk, and in fact, people often say, like, you know, how they have Zazen instruction in the morning, and then it's like a little break, and then there's the Dharma talk in the Buddha hall, and people are like, well, they're often, you know, beginners to the temple, first-timers to the temple, so they're like, well, what's the topic going to be? And you're like, I don't know, Because our big thing is how do you meet your life? That's really the essence of all practice, right? How are you in your life? How are you with life? And in Zen, the word for a formal Dharma talk is called teisho, right? And it actually means more the expression of the shout. That's like the word's meaning. And so you're like, well, what shout, right? It's like, how do you meet life in a very direct way? So it isn't so much about telling you or saying what you should or shouldn't do, though those words might come out. More useful, I think, or the base intention is how is the experience that we're in this Dharma talk together. Okay, somebody needs to mute their thing. Lien, can you mute it?
Should I just try and mute the computer?
Okay, I think it worked. How do you meet the moment and what arises there? And everything does change, right? So often it is about, to me, and on a certain level, it's about what comes up in your life. So I would say today, what came up was this, or what, and by that I mean it can be something that, you know, for a lot of us that might be some stress that happened at work or school or whatever, or it could be some emotional thing you had today, or it could be something that happened on the way in here, or your meditation was good or bad or whatever, right? So what came up for me, one thing that came up for me today that I like to say resonate with me is I was watching Netflix, right? And I've been watching Top Chef season 14. And you know how they have, on Hulu, they have commercials, right? And today there was this commercial from the New York Times. And it said, he said, she said, just, it's a white background and the words are black. He said, she said, he said, she 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 said, right? And then that was this, and it scrolled a little bit, the she said, just a little bit. And then the next white background with, white background with black words in Times Roman, which is like newspaper type, right? Which is also considered like actually traditional, right? Is the truth has power. Then another screen, the truth will not be threatened. And another one is the truth has a voice. And then the New York Times logo. Pretty powerful, wouldn't you say? And I was like, I want to see that again. And I was busy writing it down, and I actually had to go look online, because then it stopped playing. I mean, it played it like 3 times or something, and then it didn't come up again. And I will say that this, of course, the New York Times, right, the 2 reporters, Jodi Kantor and Megan Tuhey, right there, the reporters who reported on Harvey Weinstein in October. And I've seen Jodi Kantor more on whatever Channel 5 is in the morning. And a few weeks ago, when they were like summarizing the year, right, she was on, both of them were on, and they were saying that when they went to the editor with the story, the editor said, "Are you naive? Like, everyone knows this about him. You really want to just do it? Nothing's going to happen. You know, it'll end up on, like, 2 minutes, people talking about it, but so what, right?" And obviously, it's been huge, this whole Me Too movement. And in fact, last night was the Golden Globe, right? And how before that I had heard, I'm not really into all that stuff so much, except I had heard that the whole, there's this whole response, of course, called Time's Up, right? Which are women in the film industry, actors, and working with activists to set up a legal defense fund, for the most part, for people from not just the Hollywood people, but people from different classes who might need legal help around sexual harassment and assault. And so they had some of those women. But anyway, there was this whole thing about wearing black, because the whole, red carpet thing is about women wearing whatever fashion. And on one level, there's nothing wrong on a certain level with objectification, if you're okay with being objectified, right? And there's some of that. It's not like we're going to get away from it. And I had heard about it, and then my thing is to think, oh, I wonder which women will not wear black, and there'll be like a whole bunch of women wearing red or something, and so I had just happened to turn on the TV last night when it was starting, and everyone wore black. There was a little black white, but very much everyone wore black, and I was so like, wow, amazing, amazing, and there was a lot of stuff, and it was considered very powerful. Notice I'm wearing all black. I actually went back in after I left and go, wait a minute, I have an all black rakusu, right? And I had on a brown t-shirt, and I was like, wait. And I had pulled this out on purpose on that, and then, so. Now, how is this about practice? In essence, or a way to think about practice is that this is exactly what practice is. How do we realize that our truth has power? Our truth can't be threatened. Our truth has a voice. Some of you have heard me say, right, and have done deep listening, and definitely and have heard me say that Zazen is about deep listening. Really, we sit down to really listen to what's going on, to be aware, and a lot of the way that we do it is really, on a certain level, you could literally say, listen to yourself, to the story that keeps going, different characters, and it's usually pretty much the same story, right? And mostly we've ignored our stories, or there are some that we keep on perhaps massaging, but it's about, well, it's like this, but I really wish it was more like this, right? And so how is it that we can see our story completely and let it be okay? Let it have power, right? Of course, we want to talk about how we meet that power and to what extent are we with that power, which may involve managing the truth, the power. And by managing, I don't mean necessarily manipulating it. In fact, our life, we've tried to manage it, really, isn't it? But by the way, the truth, you could say, is suffering. Or, more correctly, the truth is resisting truth. I'm sorry, suffering is resisting truth. Wouldn't you say? So much of what we're afraid of is some truth we don't want to meet. At least that's my experience. Maybe I'm suffering more than the rest of you, or suffering in a way odd from the rest of you. I don't think so. So, let's go back to your list. Sitting, and keep coming back to it, which is really to build patience, right? Through learning, reflecting, and acting on, right? The precepts are basically a framework for how to meet your truth. Well, what to identify? A lot of practice, sitting still and keep coming back to it, is to identify exactly what your truths are. What are your thoughts about your truths? What are your emotions about your truths? And what are the sensations of your truths, right? So we're taught really, we're learning how to be with our truth in different ways. And it's a framework. And hopefully, we're also building in the quality of how we want to meet, how we want to be with our truth. Right? Not the content is useful, and can we cultivate a way? It is the way to practice with the First Noble Truth is to investigate, but it's not an investigation. Not that sometimes it might not be this. The kind of investigation, let's say, like I was talking with a friend who's a scientist, right, or had been a scientist all her life, and now she's not working and hasn't worked for a while, and she was really saying, thinking maybe she had some regrets with events in her life because she wasn't curious enough, right? And I said, oh, I think you've been very curious, but you were taught, you're literally like, you know, has a PhD in science, right? That her sense of how she was taught and conditioned, and we all have this, right? Is we've been conditioned to investigate or be curious about what's going on in a very particular way. You know, the scientific way, which is to prove something, which means you have an idea or a theory, a concept. By that I don't mean those are bad things to do, and yet it doesn't really work in our life. By that I don't mean it doesn't work at times to have that kind of investigative sense of our life, but in general, we don't, our life is inconceivable, so whatever theory, I have had many theories about my life, and most of it hasn't panned out the way I thought it should, right? So the investigation needs to be gentle and an open kind of curiosity, not so much a rooting it out to prove something. I mean, it can be, and then to see how that, does it serve creating a container that's open to your truths and other people's truths? Or is it serve to push, like limit truth? Which at times needs to be, mind you, but in general we're talking about, right? And some of that comes, here's the other thing that's really difficult, I think. And that is, let me say it first, and that is to think that we get to pick and choose, right? Both what our truths are and how we should explore those truths. Right? Doesn't mean that you don't have volition in that, mind you, or that you shouldn't have some volition. And for the most part, much of our practice, right, and by much I mean 10, 15 years, is to learn, in essence, actually, all our lives. It takes a lot more effort in the first 10, 15 years to meet the truth as it is. and be open for however it is. That's the hard part. Not about when I want it to happen, how I want it to happen. And we do that all the time, and that doesn't make it bad. It's just a matter of seeing where in our life are we constantly saying this is how it has to be, to fit my schedule, to fit my time, to fit my ease, which again doesn't mean that those things are bad, and how much of our life is about trying to control or make things fit how we think things are. Because mostly things are not that way, and are you keeping yourself from that knowledge, basically, right? Is there the fear of letting in the sense of uncontrollable, which even my saying it, I'm trying to not to say the word, which is chaos, right? The fear of chaos. When it isn't just, for the most part, it isn't what you thought it is. But for most of us, that means chaos, or we're afraid that it will be chaos. And by chaos, I also mean the sense of that it's just so overwhelming that it's hard to meet. And so that's why a lot of our practice is also to build the capacity to be with things, which is to keep coming back to it, right? And to practice, I would say practice mindfulness. Remember, is to remember, right? In terms of the practice of mindfulness. Any comments or thoughts? No? I take challenges, so go for it. Any comments or thoughts so far? All right. No? I've got it right perfectly. What we're also building is a sense of balance, right? And a sense of flexibility. So for most of us, most of the world really tries to get us to say what is, and to have very clear, firm sense of things and boundaries around things and around ourselves and who we are. And yet, it's when we're flexible and when we're balanced that it's easier really to be able to respond to things, right? As opposed to react to things, or as opposed to defending against. And that doesn't come easily, so it does take effort, and it does take diligence. And again, this is why it takes 10, 15 years of just finding and sticking with a schedule, right? I will say that mostly, right, what I try to do is to create containers. This sitting group is a container for a way to bring your effort. It's a structure for how to hold your effort and your awareness of your effort, okay? And to bring in your intention and how does that play out. Not only in what you do, but how we interact with each other and you interact with each other. And it's the same thing with all, the awake program or whatever else, or class or whatever. Or sesshin. We can really see that in sesshin or in retreat, that it's a container. Now, the harder thing, and we could say I hesitate to say the more advanced, because then we all go into, oh my God, okay, I'm there or I'm not, right? Is to actually meet any container willingly, right? As it is. That's the key part, as it is. Because mostly we pick and choose what container we want and how we want it, which is in itself fine, except for if we're really practicing, right? This is the thing about practice is we're practicing to figure out what happens when things are not how we want them to be. This is why we sit still and let our foot hurt. Why else would you want to do that? Right? Why else do I ask you that? Not to torture you, really, but to find out what happens there, or when you have a thought that you just want to spit out, or you just want to get away from, or an emotion. So this is why it's good to find containers, and at the same time to see that going into a container or being in a container isn't about the container. It's about you making the commitment or knowing that it's your choice to be in that container. And this is really hard to learn. I know when I first went to Tassajara, so I don't know, for those who don't know or don't remember, when I went to Tassajara, right, I had already been doing insight practice, the Spirit Rock style, for like 5.5 years. I'd just come back from Vietnam. Was it my second time? Yes, my second time, but I just floored that I could not go back home. I always thought I was taken from my home, and I went back, and I was just floored, right, that it was not an option for me. I was really, really had no idea who I was, anything anymore, right? And I have a birth sister, and I was gone for 6 months, right? So yes, I could have gone to Spirit Rock, IMS in the East Coast, but I didn't want to leave my sister, right? So then I was looking for a way to do like a long retreat. So I ended up at Tassajara to work the 5 months of the summer, and at the time you get 2 practice periods in the winter, though. I was not going there to do Zen. My little experience with San Francisco Zen Center, I was like, why would I do that, right? In fact, somebody who used to be in the Buddhist color started with me, said, will you go to Tassajara with me? Because she knew I wanted to do a long retreat, and I was like, no way, right? And conditions in my life brought it to where it became an option. But really my intention was just to do the 3 months, like as a container. It wasn't about Zen or not Zen. It was just this call to practice to sit for 3 months, right? And I got there in the summer, and I got put on cabin crew. And cabin crew is basically, you clean the guest rooms, and then when there's some time, then you're painting or you're cleaning or whatever. And I actually had thought, wow, I should be a ergonomic expert, or I should be like like, what is it when you do things really well in a time-saving way? Do you know what I mean? Like, I thought I just knew how to do everything in the best way, in the quickest way. Most efficient. I should be an efficient expert, right? I really did think, at one point I thought, oh yeah, that's what I should have done as a career, right? And I was very proficient also at things. And I should say, I had a German mother. I always thought it's exactly where to put things. So, there are a lot of background to how I formulated myself in that way, right? And I remember the Shika, who's the head of the guest service, and in summer it is really much about the guests, but so they tell you like how to do things, right? And I remember there was one point we had some extra time, must have been in the middle of the week, and we were painting the outside the pines cabins. Have you been to Tassajara? Where it's just wood, you're painting, right? And I was saying how we should do it to her, and and what might be saving some time. I don't remember the details, to be honest, but it was just like I was giving her an opinion of how to do it, the Shika. And she was like, in Zen, you just do what you're told. Just do it. And I was like, what? This is why I don't want to do Zen. Oh, I'm just going to put in my time and just get out of this place because that's so stupid, And so you can imagine that my 3.5 years at Tassajara, there was a lot of suffering because there's a lot of instruction in Zen, isn't it? And there's a lot about what's right and what's wrong and how to do things. And so I have met that so many times, and I continue to meet it, mind you, right? And yet, it's a really, really, really hard lesson to learn, and not because, one should, mind you. So we forget. Here's the other thing to really consider, is that on a certain level, I was extremely fortunate to have been, on this level, I was extremely fortunate to be at Tassajara because Tassajara, whether it's the summer or not, and it takes you a little while to realize that even in the summer, it's a monastery, right? Which means that practice is the most important thing, and it has to be. Which means that you have to look at yourself and what is your reaction to things versus your response to things. Everything. You have to take complete responsibility for it, which doesn't mean you're able to, mind you, or that you do it nicely. I did not do it nicely at all, trust me. Right? Or at times I did, right? The forms I did for a while, right? So you have to meet where it is, or where are the places, right? Because there's not just one, that there is any tightness, not because it's a wrong thing to have tightness, mind you, and see if it's true for you. My experience is when there's tightness, the chance for suffering arises much more. Especially when that tightness is resistance, and it will come up, resistance. Resistant because it isn't the way we think it should be. Or I'm not the way I think I should be, or you're not the way I think you should be. And so we have to be dedicated, or there's a need for dedication to meeting everything as what is it that's my reaction here, right? And where is it that I can respond versus react? And at times you're not going to be able to see the response. You just need to keep seeing the reaction and feeling the reaction, not the insight of the reaction, though those are nice. Really just to be with it completely. We know that resistance is futile, as the Bork would say, right? And yet we do it over and over and over. And so we need to meet it and see. When you see how resistance really hurts, right? Not only yourself probably, but others. Then the ability to stop it kind of happens on its own. And it won't happen the first time you realize that it needs to stop. It won't happen the 100th time, the 10,000th time. or 1 out of a 10,000 for a while. And here's the thing, is you get to see that you have a choice, and that's the key. Whether you do or not on a certain level, almost doesn't matter. It's that you see that there is a choice here. So that has to be what's important. And the choice, the thing we forget about in the West is that practice is not only for my well-being, it's for society's well-being. That's essentially cause and effect. Let's see, one more thing. So our practice is really about stripping away, right? Stripping away resistance on a certain level. Which isn't about the why so much. You know, I don't like whys so much. If you don't, then you will know so in PDs. Right? Most of our practice is about the what and the how. And I even want to propose to you that the what becomes even less important. And the how becomes more important. Right? So maybe, I don't know, I'm hoping that 2018, right? And at least this is my hope for myself and my hope for the Sangha, is that we really focus more on how are we practicing, which includes how do we meet our aspirations, which is the Buddha, our practice, or our understanding of practice, and our engagement with practice, which includes the precepts, right? So that's the Dharma. And then, of course, with each other, which is the Sangha, which is the harder part for most of us, right? So, and the how do we do that? That's my wish for 2018. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
I like the formulation that it's about building capacity, because, and you're talking about the, I don't know the words you've used, but I'm thinking of unpredictability, uncertainty, could be chaos, but I don't like that word. But when I let myself be aware of life, it can be really overwhelming, you know. It's a lot of stuff that goes on in a day if you really pay attention to it. The more you pay attention to it, the more mindful you are, kind of the more amazing it can be. And so I like the idea of building capacity to surf the waves. This sounds off the wall, but this morning everything was going wonderfully, and I'm backing out, and I almost hit a car that's parked on the street behind me. I didn't hit it, but I didn't realize I almost hit it until I had straightened up and was moving away from it, and I just think about all the things that almost happened. So many things almost happen. And a lot of things do happen, and a lot of things don't happen. But just being aware of all of that, it can make me feel kind of crazy sometimes, you know. And so that's one reason I like I think a lot of people, myself included, you try to block out some of that stimulus and awareness and think this practice is to help me be aware of it and not thrown by it.
Dogen said is that enlightenment is intimacy with all things. Okay? And mostly, I try very hard not to be intimate with so many things, because it means I have to interact with it fully, and I have things to do, shows to watch or whatever, right? And in fact, for the most part, when things come at me that I didn't want to include, I thought would be included, I'm like, what? So, yeah. This is why, we think we want intimacy, and really most of our practice is learning how to be intimate, which is to build capacity to be with things and people, damn it, who don't do what we want them to do, right? Or say what we want them to say, be how we want them to be. Thank you very much. Let's dedicate the merit. Michelle, at the end of the merit, you just hit the bell once.
At the end of the merit.
Yeah. For any merit we accrue tonight, we dedicate to ourselves. We dedicate to all beings. May we all be able to express our truth. Know that it will be validated, valued, and cared for. This we wish for all beings in the 10 directions and the 3 times. Thank you very much. Happy 2018.